Greetings. Hey, thanks for joining me here on the Do Business Better podcast. I'm your host, Damian Mason, but you already knew that because you heard that in the introduction. We're coming at you as an audio, which we always have for all of these nearly 100 episodes. And we're also coming at you video here on YouTube. That's right. If you've always been a listener and you want to now be a viewer, if you want to see my beautiful face and my guest's beautiful face, go on D Mason Comedy. That's my YouTube channel. It's just as easy as going on YouTube and just type in Damian Mason, and they get a playlist there for this podcast, Do Business Better, as well as my other podcast about the business of food and agriculture, which is called The Business of Agriculture. Got a great show for you today, as always, because I've got a guy who's a franchise fanatic. Now that sounds silly, but he's a franchise consultant. He knows about franchises. He helps people get franchises. He brokers franchises. He's going to tell you about franchising, because some folks need a little guidance. Also, let's not pretend this is not entrepreneurialism. There are people that I know that have Subway franchises, and they make a boatload of money, and they just do a little bit of innovation here and there. Anyway, his name is Lance Graulich. He's going to tell you more about it than I can tell you, because that's what he does. He makes a living helping other people make money by being in the franchise business. Is that an adequate introduction?
What an intro, Damian. How do I follow up that?
All right. So, first off, you start by telling these people that are listening, because the people that listen to this podcast, Lance, they might be a striving, want to be business owner. They might own a little business. A lot of them might just be sole proprietors, maybe like a guy and his wife that have 3 dry cleaners. What do they need to know about what you do? Because I find it interesting that I drive down the street and I said, I wonder if you owned 3 of those, could you make a lot of money? And that's probably what you're going to tell me.
Absolutely. I have entrepreneurs from all walks of life. And in some cases, I call them prepreneurs, because there are people that maybe never owned a business that approach me. The bottom line is, people that have owned their own business before understand the trials and tribulations, the learning curve, if you will, to get your business to, what you initially envisioned. What was your initial vision or intent for your business is a question I commonly ask people when I work on a consulting basis to assist them in their growth, and whether it's revenue or improving their marketing. Now, on the franchise side, franchises have been around forever. And the reason franchises have succeeded is it's a proven system. And the best part of that proven system is, my job is to introduce people to brands that they're going to like, they're going to love, and it's about finding them the perfect franchise. And at some point in the process, they say to me, you know what, Lance, I really like that brand. Can you introduce me? Now, further down the road, the end result is they have a stage that we call validation. They get to talk to other franchisees and find out, number one, would they do it again? And number 2, how much money do you make? Because in franchising, the brands are not allowed to say just anything about earnings claims. That's in the franchise disclosure document. Not to go down the rabbit hole of legal aspects of franchising. It is regulated by the federal government. But look, franchising is like any business. The top 10% of all franchisees are very wealthy and quite successful, and the bottom 10% are not. And everybody else in between is doing well. But look, cut your learning curve. You get into a franchise. Nobody's closed your eyes to this. Your eyes are wide open going into this process. You start to understand what fits me and what doesn't fit me. And my services are free. I consult with people and show them what I think will fit them. Now, I do have people that come to me that maybe want a restaurant or want a home-based business. And I have others that say, you know what, Lance, you're the expert in this. Show me something that will fit me. And it's amazing what happens there. A lady landed with a hair salon recently. Now, it's the middle of, COVID-19. So at the time, her area was not open, so to speak.
Get arrested. You'll get arrested if you try. The woman in Dallas, get arrested if you try and cut somebody's hair, right?
Which is terribly sad these days, but that's the reality. We hope safety first is what everybody looks to do, and that's everybody's goal. But that's kind of the crux of things. Franchising is alive and well, and through the pandemic, I have brands that are essentially recession proof. I mean, brands like home restoration. Yeah. If somebody has a flood or a fire or smoke damage or mold remediation is required, Interest rates are low. People are still looking for homes. So you get into a home like that and you need, or you're actively living in a home like that, you need a brand to bail you out. Franchising has a lot of home restoration brands that are quite successful.
All right. So before we get into all that, here's a couple of things. So first off, your background, you have an economics degree and you were going to be a finance guy. And then you went to work for a company that I think is a neat brand, and it's one that everybody recognizes, TGI Fridays. I was a little kid growing up on a farm in Huntington, Indiana. I went to Pittsburgh. My oldest brother lived in Pittsburgh. It's the first time I went to this place. It was crazy because it was ruckus, there was music, you're a little kid from a small farming background. You're like, what the hell's going on here? And I thought, wow, that's neat. So I believe that was not the first franchise I'd ever gone to, but it's the one that you started out with. And I have an indelible memory. So tell me what you said. You worked for them doing what?
Well, so I got recruited. I was working on Wall Street for my dad's company. I was one of those guys that, grew up with the purpose or thought process that I'm going to follow dad into his business, which was, Wall Street. They were the largest over-the-counter trading house on Wall Street. I worked in the trading room throughout the summers to learn as an apprentice. And then I graduated. I sat in the trading room and I said to myself, Damian, like you have at some point in your life, and said, is this for me? Is this what my purpose is? I'm going to be in a trading room. Although I can make a tremendous income, I'm in the middle of New York City, and I'm done. I want greener pastures, so to speak. Not so much farming like you do, but I wanted something else. And talk about timing. I had a relative that called me who was very successful in tech before most people were successful in tech in the 70s, late 70s. And he said, I want to buy a TGI Fridays franchise. I heard you're bored. I know you had some experience in the restaurant business in college. You enjoy the people aspects of the business. Come join me. And he bought 4 TGI Fridays restaurants in the Phoenix, Arizona market. And I started, hold on to your shorts, I started as a host at TGI Fridays for $8 an hour. $8 an hour. He would not give me anything more than that to move, but I lived in his guest house on his property.
Yeah, and the thing they always talk about is you learn from the floor up, so to speak. It wasn't the idea that you're going to stay a host, but the point is then you see it from the front of stores they talk about in restaurant and bar business.
Absolutely.
And so you see it from front of store, and then probably maybe at some point you move back to being in the kitchen. Then you see it from back of the house, which is really, really important because remember, if there's first off, you need customers. If you don't have customers, you have no business. And then your customers came there to eat. So if you don't have the back of the house working right, you're screwed up. So I imagine you did both. And then all of a sudden you started understanding.
You hit it right on the head. Front of the house, back of the house. Back of the house typically is called heart of the house. A lot of customers aren't seeing it, but that's the heart. That's where everything starts. And I did it all. Went through Friday's 6-month training program, became a manager, eventually became a regional manager. And I helped Uncle Steven, in strategy sessions and really learned from him over the years. But I got really close with my mentor today, Ken Green, who ran that brand for them. And I'm still very close to Ken, to this day. We speak almost weekly.
Okay.
And it was,
The thing is, you were not an owner. And
I was not.
Then take me from Fridays.
Yeah. So from Fridays, I got the taste. I got bit by the bug of franchising in the restaurant business, so to speak. I had some restaurant experience prior, but I said, I'm loving this franchise model. And that Fridays franchise, we built that through acquisitions and new store openings over 5 years to $225 million a year. And it was an incredible company and brand. But the leadership of Fridays changed, and my vision no longer matched with theirs, and Fridays didn't do so well thereafter. But I said to myself, I need to be my own boss. Quite honestly, I had some bosses that I reported to at TGI Fridays that I didn't have a good experience with. And I was friends with all the big bosses, but the intermediaries, when I was running up the ladder, I said to myself, I'm not going to waste my time doing this. I want to be my own boss. And, over time, it took me time, but I got an investment group together. I made some mistakes, but I ended up becoming a partner in Krispy Kreme. And I did Krispy Kreme in multiple states. I was essentially invited into this partnership, and I was the managing partner. $25 million a year selling donuts in multiple states is what we built that to. And I was the operating partner. I was the hands-on guy, just like I was at TGI Fridays, and loved that experience. And from there, years later, I did Wingstop. And made some other mistakes, in some cases different. I've created my own brands along the way, a donut shop that was incredible. I'm now currently helping a Food Network star create a new donut shop in Las Vegas called Wicked. So I'm an advisor to that as well, but I created a brand in Vegas called Pink Box Donuts. It's pretty famous.
You sold out of your involvements on these other. Do you own a restaurant right now?
Right now, I have a piece of a brand in the Midwest, a brew pub brand in the Midwest. I have some equity in, but I sold out of everything else because what I wanted to do is basically take all of my experiences. I realized on my journey that so many young emerging restaurant brands and franchise brands in general didn't really know how to tap in. Maybe they didn't make the proper transition with digital marketing today versus where they were 15 years ago before the internet.
Mhm.
You know, how to bring in franchisees to their model. How is it appropriate? What is the appropriate methodology to grow today? So I have several exclusive and private clients, but I'm in a network where I am the largest franchise broker in the United States. It's closer to about 580 brands that I represent today, probably 155 restaurants, and the rest are in literally 100, 150, 175 other categories.
Okay, so tell me how does Lance Graulich with your company name is
Ion.
Ion Franchising.
I have my Ion franchising, Damian.
So how do you make money at Ion Franchising?
Well, I am on a commission basis with all of the brands that I represent. We have different commission deals, whether it's a single unit deal or multi-unit deal.
Okay, now
And
is it because, hang on now, the person listening to this show says, man, I tell you what, I've thrown a few things at the wall that didn't stick. Maybe I should just grab what capital I can, leverage the house, and buy 4 Krispy Kremes, Wicked Donuts, whatever you want to call it.
yeah.
Is that who calls you? Or does the company that says, I want 500 of these things across the country, go and figure out a way to get them sold? Who calls you, or is it both?
All of the above. And there's a third part of it. So anybody looking at a franchise, anybody that has questions about a franchise, I do it all for free. There are people I talk to for years before a deal closes. And then there are other people that never buy a franchise, and that's okay. I feel like I can help them out. Now, yes, corporations or brands call me. I got a call from a big brand the other day that invited me into their network, and they don't use brokers. A lot of brands keep things in-house. But the third leg of it that I've been very successful with is my team sets up independent businesses to franchise. So a lady called me the other day from Atlanta through a referral. Lance, I have a salon suites business. I have 2 locations. I've looked at other franchise brands out there in the salon suites segment. I think I have a competitive advantage over them, and they're quite successful. They have 150 so locations plus. Can you help me? We get on the phone, always a first call, obviously, with me. We get on with my team as well. We lay it out, and she's in, and she's going to start franchising. Usually we can set people up to franchise within 90 days.
Okay, so her then, so because somebody listening to this show right now might be saying, hey, I do pretty well, and I've got 3 locations. Maybe there could be 20.
Yes.
What do they need to know?
Well, what they need, first of all, like I said, my first consultation is obviously free, and we have a fee for setting it up, which is very cost effective. What they need to know is they need to look within themselves and know, number one, do they have demand for their business? Are people like the salon suites lady, Patrice, are people asking her, or people asking the individual, let's call her Patrice, for a franchise? Patrice has a list of people that are interested in, joining her franchise. Number 2, do you have a solid system, procedures, and systems in place, or can you get that together? Sometimes it's like writing a book. Can you get all that information together quickly? And of course, that's something that can be refined on a regular basis. When I joined Wingstop, their procedures weren't what they were in the early days compared to what they are today. So that is okay. But is it a system that people can make money? Can you charge somebody a royalty, an ongoing royalty? Number one, feel good about it, that they're going to get value on an ongoing basis with your brand and your systems, and they're going to make some great profitability. And a franchise is a long-term relationship like a marriage. Typically they're 10-year agreements. So when you invite somebody into your brand, you're going to be with them for 10 years minimum.
Okay, so the most of the time I'm guessing that you're making your living off of the company that wants to have 20 more facilities or 100 more branches or whatever. How often do you get called by somebody like Damian Mason that says, hey, you know what, I've got my business that I do this, and I got my farm, but I wouldn't mind owning 3 Wendy's or something like this.
Right.
But do I need you? Because I know that if I read the Wall Street Journal, I might run across an ad that says, if you have $1 million of net worth, you can own McDonald's or whatever. Tell me how that works.
Well, the reason you want me involved is, number one, if you go directly to a major brand that you're targeting versus me, I become your advocate, and I might show you other brands that you like better than that brand. And you're not going to pay more by going to me at the end through the brand. The franchise fee is the same, and that's a legal thing as well. The franchise fee is the same whether you use me or go directly to any of my brands.
Yeah, so you're taking a bite out of what I'm paying doesn't come, it comes out of theirs versus mine. So that's fine. Then I get the consultation and the advice, etc. So that's all good. And then you say, hey, you thought, Damian, that you wanted to own 2 or 3 Wendy's. There's another up and coming burger place, whatever, In-N-Out or some such thing. And you say, really might be a better fit. Is that kind of what you're doing?
That's exactly right. Now, keep in mind, my first phone call with people, we talk about their investment level they're looking to make. Are they going to require financing? What is their desired market? So for some people, for example, I'm working with a gentleman in Canada right now. He looked years ago and got overwhelmed, and he gave it up because before you knew it, he inquired with so many different brands. He had people chasing him for years on his voicemail. You avoid all of that dealing with me, because what I'll do is a territory check for you. None of my brands will contact you until I say, Wendy's, Mr. Damian Mason would like a phone call. Please reach out to him.
Yeah. I imagine that once they think that there's somebody with $1 million that she is wanting to put into something, by God, then it's like the sharks are circling, right?
In some cases. And I don't sell anything. I'm here as a resource.
Yeah.
And that's truly it, and if I can get you a business, that's my deal.
Let me ask you this. Okay. Play the devil's advocate. I'm entrepreneurial. I'm creative. Why would I need to buy that place? And of course, the first thing you're going to say is, well, they have a system. And generally, there's a reason Subway exists or McDonald's or whatever. Their system must work. Their failure rate is, we always hear that half the small businesses fail within 5 years. The truth is, I don't think they fail. I think sometimes they just give up. They just, it's like, my God, this is a lot of work.
They give up and they don't want to put money in it again anymore.
Right. Yeah. And my buddy Larry Wingett always made the joke. He's like, these people that say they've got a dream of running a small business, for most people, it's a freaking nightmare. You're going to quit your normal job where they give you a car allowance and insurance and a 401k. And now you're going to be working Saturday until 11 o'clock at night. You sure that's your dream? So I understand all those things. So it's a proven system. What other reasons?
Well, one of my favorite, clarity is currency. And when you can get clarity on what you're doing, I know quite a few high net worth individuals that have taken the path to become a franchisee first. Maybe they made their money in real estate. Maybe they made their money in Wall Street. Maybe they made their money in farming. I don't know. Maybe not in farming. I don't know.
Yeah, so the point is, then they said it's time for the third act or the second act, and
exactly.
This is something that I can be an investor in. And then there's the idea that it's a proven system. This way, I don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yes, and to your exact point, what ends up happening most often is these high net worth individuals jump into a franchise, whether they're going to run it themselves or hire people, give somebody else equity, make somebody else a managing partner. And they become very successful within either a niche or just in general, the franchise world that they've never been exposed to before. They're probably going to buy more franchises than, maybe they own a restaurant franchise and now they're going to get into a salon. Like I have a family friend that owns 19 Great Clip salons and makes a fortune. But the culmination to all of this, Damian, to your point, is some of those people down the road, after owning franchises and understanding systems, then they do their own business, because now they have a better foundation, and then they do create their own brand because they feel more confident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the other part of this. It can be as hands off, I guess. If you've got the money, I knew a guy that played for the Chicago Bears years ago. I met him in Scottsdale, Arizona. We used to play basketball. So he's a former NFL football player that then got into Burger Kings. And, he talked about that. He said, I was a star at Ohio State, and then I'm a star for the Chicago Bears. And I went and signed autographs at a Burger King in Whiting, Indiana. And the guys gave me his card and said, hey, when your football career is over, he's like the next week, he goes out and gets his knees shot, he's shot. So he bought Burger Kings. And he said, it can be pretty humbling because I'm running on to Soldier Field with my arms in the air and everybody's cheering for me. And then a month later, I didn't know anything about running restaurants. I've eaten at Burger King, and all of a sudden, nobody comes in, and I'm back there making sandwiches. So, it still doesn't remove the work. It gives you a system. It gives you a system that's probably been successful. There's a reason there's so many Burger Kings, right? But it doesn't mean that you're not still sometimes having to do the work.
No, there are unsuccessful franchisees, and in most cases, it's the person. And I hate to say it, in most cases, it's the person. It could be a really bright person that put somebody else in charge and didn't check them, because in a business like Burger King, in your example, very customer service focused. You have to have the consistent product, and not everybody's going to be successful. Franchising is not right for everybody. Now, one of the things I take people through, to your point here, is: are you going to be an owner-operator? Are you looking for a single unit, multiple units? Are you going to be an executive level owner? I have a brand that I personally represent that's a very, very hot brand. I have a lot of celebrities that are inquiring. And the number one question I ask to the rapper that I spoke to on the phone is, you're amazing, you're incredible, you have a tremendous amount of money. That's fantastic. Who is going to run this business? Mm-hmm. I had the same conversation with a retired basketball player the other day. Who's going to run the business? Mm-hmm. Well, I know people. That's wonderful. I just want to warn you, the biggest failure that I see with successful people getting involved in franchising is they lose sight of the fact that someone's got to run this business.
That's a fantastic. I was queued up. See, you're a good guest, because I was queued up to ask you biggest mistake, and I was going to wonder if that was it. They think, oh, I got money. I just bought 4, XYZ franchises, and that's my new business. Like, well, great. Who's still making the sandwiches, or who is still cutting the hair, or who is still making sure that someone is there to cut the hair, or making sure that someone is there to do the mold check in the basement with dry basement, franchise. So I get your thing. Is that the biggest failure? They don't understand that somebody still has to actually run the thing and do the work?
Absolutely. They can't. I truly believe that autopilot, so to speak, can come down the road. Again, family friend that owns 19 Great Clips hair salons. He worked for a year and a half. He worked hard for a year and a half, only a year and a half or so. And then he stepped back. In multi-unit operations, you can be hands-on for 1 or 2 locations and split your time. 3 locations, it makes it pretty hard. By the time you get to 4 locations, guess what, Damian? You can't clone yourself, 25% of yourself, and have it be effective. You have to work through your people. And that's just leadership 101. And franchise brands, the best brands, will teach you all about multi-unit management.
Yeah, and that's the thing there, because, somebody like me, 26 years of sole proprietor, if you will, my business, it needs me.
Absolutely.
Call for jury duty. I always put the thing: my business cannot substantively nor materially operate without me being present. I think is the actual. I've gotten called for jury duty like 6 times. It's always the same thing. I'm like, I can't be at the courthouse for the next 13 weeks if there's some big trial going on, because this business, there's no cheeseburgers that get made without Damian Mason. So there's that part of it. And like you always say, you can do a couple units. But all of a sudden, when you're going to have 6, you can't be at 6 places, and things suffer. So that's the biggest mistake. Success story. The thing, we can hear about big money and all that. You got a good story for me. The poor gal that she cut hair and then she all of a sudden has 3 places. Is there a good one like that?
Yeah, there are so many stories out there. I mean, there's guys. Look, when I was at Wingstop, the very first franchisee of Wingstop, this is a great story. The first franchisee of Wingstop fell in love with the food, like often happens with the restaurant business. And he signed on as a new franchisee. And he had X amount of money, he had some working capital, but the business didn't take off, as some businesses don't. Wingstop was not an established brand at that point, but he wasn't going to start his own wing place. He didn't want to figure out the R&D, so to speak, on all these sauces and everything. And he wanted to buy a system, even though it was a new brand. So within about 9 months, he needed money. He went back to the original owner of Wingstop and said, look, I'm going to go out of business. Any way you can float me a loan? And he got a loan from the original founder. That guy today, unfortunately, I lost track of him in time. Last I checked, had 30 plus Wingstops. And he's a multi-gazillionaire from Wingstop. And, it's all about persistence, work ethic, having a vision for yourself. But, you have to have the money, and you have to have the ability to get the money, because too many businesses fail just because they were that close. You've seen the images on the internet or videos. I've seen all kinds of memes around of that guy with his miner's pick, and he's mining for gold, and he gives up. And what he doesn't see on the other side after 20 years of mining for gold,
he's that far away. He's that
far away. He was that far away. And that's what happens in business. Sometimes people give up too soon, but you got to have the capital.
His name is Lance Graulich. My name's Damian Mason. The podcast is named the Do Business Better Podcast. You know that. The sponsor is me, Damian Mason, reminding you that if you are a franchisee, franchisor, if you just want to be a business person, if you belong to a trade group or an association that has a meeting, yes, someday meetings will come back, because we all know that you can't really build networking over the internet. And more importantly, people go to associations and conferences so they can go to the bar afterwards and bitch about stuff and possibly hook up. We know what really happens at these conferences. So when your conference comes back in and you decide you need a speaker on stage that can talk about business, please look me up at DamianMason.com. Lance Graulich, if they want to, first off, closing thoughts that anybody can profit from, whether they are a franchisee, franchisor, sole proprietor out there with that pick, hammering away, what do they need to know?
Well, to me, my biggest tip is always about your people. Train them as well as you possibly can, and you're going to have gold down the road. And if you want to visit me, go to ionfranchising.com. I have a free assessment. That free assessment will help you and help myself understand what brands you might be most compatible with, leveraging your skills and your mindset. And it's a wonderful tool for you. And let's jump on a call and have a quick 15-minute introductory call.
It was ionfranchising.com. And I know that you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram. I'm looking right here. You're on Twitter, Ion Franchising. You're, I'm sure, on LinkedIn. And Absolutely. You can also find him at Lance at Franmore, Lance at Franmore.com. So go check him out. Hey, thanks for being on here.
Thanks for having me, Damian.
All right. Till next time, it's the Do Business Better podcast.